Hello. Hi. So I wanted to learn one Finnish word, and so I learned the easiest one, hey. And I guess bye is hey hey, which is easy, so we'll wait for that one. I did some research, and Americans, what do we think of you here in Finland? It's my first visit, so I had to do some research, and maybe you know this, but you're considered the happiest people in the world, despite your weather. So congratulations on that. I'm amazed that some of you don't know that, but that's congratulations. You drink more coffee than anyone in the world. I guess you all knew that. You ice swim. That's crazy. More heavy metal bands than per capita than any other country in the world. Congratulations for that. So that's pretty cool. But the coolest thing, so the one word that I really did want to research was sisu. Am I saying that right? Which is, it's a pretty cool word. It doesn't translate necessarily directly in English. I think it means grit, sort of maybe, but it doesn't translate directly. So I think badass is probably the closest. And there's your history of pushing back the Russians in World War II and the 1972 Olympic medalists who fell and got up and still won the race. I'm sure you all know this history, but that's pretty cool. So I bring this up because I think when we talk about content and marketing and the future of marketing and the role that we have in marketing, I think we need sisu. I think the world could learn from this word and what it really means and the history for you here in Finland. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sisu and the courage that it takes and the grit that it takes, I think, to change minds, because we're experiencing, and I think I didn't understand a word of what she was saying before me, but we're seeing a lot of change in the world, not just in marketing, but in all the industries and all the technologies that are taking place and disrupting the businesses that we all work in. No matter what kind of business, no matter what country you're in, no matter what sector or size, we're all experiencing a lot of change. So in order to showcase that change, I like to use a picture of my kids because, so you can see I have four, and which is too many. But it works in this example, so I'm going to use it. We were celebrating on the right there, her name is Sophie. We were celebrating her birthday in May of last year, and she turned 15. And on that day, I got an email from LinkedIn, who also turned 15 on the same day that my daughter turned 15. And they sent an email and it said, share pictures of what you were doing 15 years ago. And obviously my wife and I had a laugh because I couldn't share pictures of what she was doing 15 years earlier. But it just kind of hit me that LinkedIn is only 15 years old. It feels like it's been around forever. It's the world's most commercially viable or first commercially viable social media platform. 15 years ago, YouTube didn't exist. Netflix didn't exist. Amazon didn't exist. Starbucks, it existed, but not to the extent, it wasn't here for sure, right? So think about all the technologies that didn't exist just 15 years ago. In the States, she can't drink alcohol, she can't vote, and yet, she's still relatively young, and yet dramatic impact on the world that we've seen with that technology. So of course, as a marketer, I had to look at my other kids to see if there was an alignment with some of the other social media platforms. And sure enough, not the same day, but by about 2 weeks, my other daughter shares a birthday with Facebook, the world's most popular or most connected social media networks, currently having a lot of privacy issues, but still widely used around the world. I looked at my son, and he shares a birthday with the launch of the iPhone by 3 weeks, the launch of the iPhone, at least in the United States. So, I look at his young face, and I can't believe that I didn't have the internet in my pocket before he was born, just 11 years ago now, or almost 12 years in October. And then my fourth, not exactly, it's about a month or so, and I'm not sure that this really has any relevance to what I'm saying. I thought it was kind of funny. But the thing is, kids are using Snapchat today, and I don't think any of us in marketing have really figured out whether it's a channel that we should use. The point of this, though, is that digital social mobile technologies, you know this, but digital social mobile technologies are as young as the faces of my kids. And I think we forget that. We forget the disruption that we've seen in the world in all of the things that we do as human beings, but certainly as business people and absolutely as marketers. Today, we're all connected to each other. We're the most important source of information for each other. We used to look to politicians and the media and newspapers and the kinds of things that we're looking to less now because we get news and information and expertise from each other. we're all sharing with each other. That's dramatically disrupted the way that we communicate as marketers. Now, I like to use this term, marketing has a marketing problem. And what I mean by that is if, everyone thinks they're a marketer. And if you ask most people what marketing is, what do they say? Any ideas what they think? Ask your mom what marketing is. I mean, for me, it's advertising. And some people even they make a face, like advertising. And there's actually a long history of brand advertisers using dirty tricks to try to convince people to do things they wouldn't normally do. So there's a long history of that, and snake oil salesmen, as we used to call them, of people trying to trick consumers into doing things that we wouldn't have normally done. And that's what people think of when they think of marketing. So part of our job in this world that's been disrupted is that we have to change the minds of everyone in our organizations about what marketing is, and that's a challenge. That's a real challenge. How do we do that? Does anybody know who the CMO of Coca-Cola is? The world's most popular brand. Anybody? The CMO of Coca-Cola left 2 years ago, and they decided not to replace him. And instead, they put a chief growth officer in charge of marketing, basically a salesperson. Chief growth officer is an ironic term because Coca-Cola sales are declining, 2% worldwide, 7% in North America. And when asked by Advertising Age magazine how he would approach marketing for the world's most iconic brand, he said, in order to make people love Coca-Cola, we need to show ads of people who love drinking Coca-Cola. That's crazy. That's insane. That's why marketing has a marketing problem, because salespeople think that's what marketing is. I see Coca-Cola all over your tram cars, right? So that's what people think marketing is. It's just advertising and promotion and propaganda that doesn't really reflect the real world. That's what people think of. But if you ask CEOs, if we asked our boss, if we ask stakeholders inside the organization what marketing should do, a lot of times they would say we should communicate our brand promise, and they might use terms that make sense for us in marketing, but really what they mean is they want to see revenue, ROI, lead some sort of a business measure that they can understand. And so I think we understand and we can accept that this is the challenge that marketers are now facing. We used to be the creatives, and now we have to be a little bit more commercially focused. And that's putting a lot of pressure on the kinds of marketing programs that we do. And so we all want to show ROI, but unfortunately, the org chart sort of gets in the way, and here's what really happens. You get a new CEO who says, I don't like the color yellow, I want to make our logo blue. And you spend millions and millions of euros creating a new logo and a new brand launch, right? None of which necessarily ties back to ROI. And then your sales team is asking for a new brochure and pens with your logos on it, and stress balls are really popular at events in the States right now. And a big booth at a trade show that's 2 stories high and centrally located and lit, with LED lights and really fancy stuff. So salespeople ask us to do lots of stuff. We're in marketing and we love to try all those new channels I referred to. We create tweets and Instagram posts, and we stick naked babies in bowls filled with our product if you're in the consumer space. We do animated explainer videos and podcasts and blog posts, and maybe you put your logo on a billboard is that a thing here in Finland? Do you have billboards? Sort of, I didn't know. But you definitely, I'm assuming, have banner ads, right? And this is an eye tracking study done by Cambridge University just 2 years ago of university students. They showed them hundreds and hundreds of web pages, and in all of those hundreds of web pages, not a single student looked at the right-hand side on one of the banners, on one of the digital display ads on the right-hand side. And yet, at least in the States, we're spending 12% more this year on digital display than we did last year, right? So we're chasing attention that's declining on just about every one of these platforms. Now we even have HR people. Is anybody getting this request from HR? We need to recruit really good-looking people. Maybe they can be smart, but they have to be good-looking, right? So now HR is asking us to do things to support their initiatives in recruiting and retention and training and development. And so we have to help them find good people for our organization. So we're feeling a lot of pressure. The CFO or the COO is maybe telling us to keep our costs down or follow new procedures. And so, we're feeling all of these different, pressures and requests from all around the organization. Everyone is asking us to create new content. Everyone is asking us to do lots of stuff. And at the end of the day, at the end of all of that stuff, the CEO comes back and says, what's the ROI of marketing? And so that's the challenge. Does that resonate with those of you in the room? Okay, good. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge that I think we have to work through. And that's why I really believe that content is the future of marketing. And so I'll tell you a few stories of companies and really individuals very much like you who I think have solved and faced these challenges and been able to come back to the organization to say, marketing isn't just ads. Ads, it's not that ads are bad, but we can't always necessarily show return on investment with some of the marketing that you ask me to do. And so here's an example of marketing that shows some sort of revenue or leads or return on investment. So that's why I believe this is happening. Now, this is Serious Decisions, which is if you haven't heard of them, they do a lot of buyer journey research for B2B companies specifically. They looked at 3,000 B2B companies around the world, and they did an audit, a deep dive audit, an actual audit of all the content in 30 of those companies, and then they did a sort of a superficial audit in the other 2,970 companies. And what they found was that on average, 60 to 70% of the content created by marketers goes completely unused. So this is not content that was created and it was published and it didn't work so well, or nobody shared it, this is content that was created and never published. So somebody asked for a new product page on the website, you created that product page but never published it to your website. Somebody asked for a sales brochure that you went and spent lots of money to create, but then didn't actually print and send to the sales team. 60 to 70% of the content we created in marketing went completely unused. It's back to all those requests that we get from around the organization. Specifically in B2B, they looked at CRM programs, and they found that campaigns that were labeled with the objective of lead generation or demand generation drove not a single lead. More than half, 56%, of demand generation campaigns drove not one quantifiable lead or amount of demand for the organization. So a large majority of the content and the marketing that we're doing just isn't working. Why do we do all this stuff? I kind of gave you the answer, but why do we do all this stuff? It's his fault, this guy. He made me do it. Behind every bad marketing idea or behind every bad piece of content is an executive who asked for it. And we've all either been at the bad end of this, or maybe we've even been the executive who have asked people to create stuff that didn't get used. So my point here is not to point the finger at this poor stock image of an executive, but really to make you feel that we're accountable. We're accountable for driving this change that I think we need to see in the future of marketing. That starts by stopping wasting our marketing budgets on content and campaigns that don't work, that we don't publish, that don't resonate, that don't drive engagement, that don't allow us to quantify and measure the success of that marketing program. So we have to stop. That's the first trick in driving a return on investment, is to stop wasting budgets on things that don't deliver return on investment. I know that's hard to do. But I'll show you some folks who've been able to do that. I think everything in life can be explained in a Venn diagram. So this is my Venn diagram for content marketing. 2 simple circles. Even executives can understand this. That's a joke. On the left-hand side is all the stuff that we typically create. And I think it's our natural instinct as marketers and business people to think that the stuff we should create is, this is who we are, this is what we sell, this is why we're better than the competition. And on the right-hand side is what your customers actually are interested in. And it's, pictures of babies and kittens and puppies. And that doesn't actually serve our business. So I'm not saying that we should create this, but I'm definitely saying that we shouldn't just create that. Content marketing is really this overlap between not necessarily what we think we should publish, but what we know, the expertise we have, especially in B2B. Our buyers have lots of questions, lots of concerns, lots of challenges. We have the answers to some of those questions. Content marketing is just about answering those questions with the knowledge that we already have inside our organization. So that's kind of my visual definition or description of content marketing. I think it's simple enough that just about anybody could understand it. But this requires empathy. This requires empathy for our customers. We have to actually care or pretend to care for the buyers that we're creating content for. Pretending actually works, believe it or not, for some folks. But we have to actually have empathy. So how do you explain the importance of empathy to an executive who doesn't have any? That's a pretty simple answer, actually. I don't know if you've seen this movie, Jerry Maguire. It's a little old now, but we have to show them the money, as he repeated many, many times in this movie. So this is my my visual. This is something you can walk into your CFO. It's a chart that goes up and to the right, and I think every presentation should have a chart that goes up and to the right. So if you don't have one, you can just take this one. Take mine. I won't care. You can just borrow it. But what this shows is the return on investment from content marketing. So the problem with advertising campaigns, again, not to say that they're bad, but if you can imagine a line that goes up with spend and goes down as soon as we stop spending, that's the result you might get from advertising if you're lucky, or any campaign. It goes up when we spend money and it goes down to zero when we stop spending money. There's no residual value from most advertising or marketing campaigns. Content marketing is an asset with real value that actually delivers a return on that investment over time. And so here's what I mean. If you look in the green, that's the investment you make in content. It doesn't have to grow over time, just small but consistent amount of money. If we invest a small but consistent amount of money in educating our buyers, you can see there in the blue, and this chart is actually a combination of about 11 clients of mine. It mostly B2B, but really in all different kinds of sectors. There's an insurance company that's B2B2C, so there is some consumer insight in here, but mostly B2B. And what you can see is that with that consistent investment, the blue bars is traffic, which doesn't have a lot of value. But if we can convert that traffic, then we can start to see leads and revenue and return on investment. But the point is that when we started back there, we had some traffic and maybe a little bit of leads. But as we go, the value accelerates. There's a compounding rate of return, just like an investment in the stock market. And the reason that happens is because if you answer customers' questions a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a lot of times those answers are still relevant today. And so that piece of content published all the way back there is still generating traffic today. And that's still generating conversions today. So content marketing, unlike most marketing campaigns, is an asset with real business value that accelerates or grows over time. So that's the terminology I use when I speak to CFOs or when I speak to non-marketers about why do we do content marketing, or why is content marketing important for marketers. We need to focus on our audience's interests. And so a lot of times B2B marketers are focused on personas. Do you guys all have personas? Lots of personas. I wrote an article that personas are great except when they suck. Because personas often talk about millennial Mary who wakes up in the morning and she looks at her phone first thing, and then she decides to go make coffee and put her kids off to school, but they don't actually necessarily always define the interests of their audience, the personas that you're defining. You need to define the actual content that they want to consume. And so I love using just here Google autofill, marketers are. Marketers are liars is unfortunately what most people see. There's a long history of what people think about marketing. But when I did that, I actually looked at Google Analytics as well in my own website, and I saw that marketers are interested in television shows. And I'm assuming you all watch Game of Thrones. If you don't watch Game of Thrones, we cannot be friends. But what I found is that marketers are obsessed with Game of Thrones. So I wrote an article, what marketers can learn from the storytelling elements of Game of Thrones. And it was one of my most popular articles ever because I was talking about their interests, not necessarily about all the things that marketers live and feel and face every single day. So think about or focus more on your audience's interests, and you can start to see engagement that's relevant for you and relevant for them as well, just using simple Google autofill features that everybody can have access to. Corporate websites are finally changing. We're seeing this not just in the consumer world, but actually it started with GE. GE started putting stories on their homepage, and even the term stories is something that became kind of a thing for corporate websites over the last 5 years or so. The reason that brands are taking that most valuable real estate, the front page of their website, and putting stories instead of just product promotion is because it engages more people. And so we saw it with GE, we saw it with Microsoft did it as well, where they were telling about the story about how technology is empowering children around the world. This is an example, it's a consumer example, but I think it's really powerful. JP Morgan Chase is one of the, I think, the largest bank in the United States. And what they found was that they were getting a significantly flat trend line on their traffic coming to their homepage. And so they put news and stories, just financial education, on their homepage. And this is what happened to their traffic. So you can see from 2012 to 2014, relatively flat here. When they put stories on their homepage, they started to see this increase. So here's another chart that goes up and to the right. It's my second. I think I have two more. We'll see. But again, you can see the impact of just putting stories and educational information on your corporate homepage can drive significant increases in engagement. They went from 10 million monthly visitors to 25 million monthly visitors. Their average cost per click prior to doing this was $2. So if you take the value of that $15 million in 15 million visits per month times 2, that's $30 million in equivalent media value. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but they would have had to buy $30 million worth of traffic to get that result instead of just publishing some content on their homepage, some stories, some financial education. So this is the vision, this is the power of storytelling and content in the future of marketing. Here's the business case, and this is more of a thing that I would use with marketers. No matter what your marketing objective is, content marketing, I think, can deliver the kinds of results that we're all feeling we need to deliver. We can reach, engage, convert, and retain buyers we've never reached before by just looking at the keywords they use, by creating the content that we know they're engaging with, and then finding ways to convert and retain that traffic. So whatever, if you're looking at awareness or consideration or purchase intent, whatever you call the buyer stages, content marketing can relate to each one of those just by looking at the keywords they use, the content they create, and then converting and retaining those. So I'll give you a few examples of those here in a second. I used to say, so this is my chart to kind of talk to the product marketers. Are there any product marketers in the audience? Product marketers are typically the ones who are asking us, why do we want to do content marketing? How's it going to help us sell more stuff? And so here's my sort of slide to answer that question. 80% of the content created by marketers is specifically product promotion. Only 5% really touches the early stage of the buyer journey. But when we look at the buyer journey, we find that for every one buyer, at least in B2B, there's 100 early stage prospects just trying to figure out what the problem is that they have and who else is facing that problem and why it's important to solve that problem. And so we need to kind of flip that pyramid a little bit. But it's not to say that we have to stop doing the stuff on the left. We just have to combine it with the stuff on the right. That's kind of the model of the future of marketing. And if we do that, then that's how we can reach, engage, convert, and retain buyers that we would have never seen before. So that's kind of the vision from a product plus content perspective. That make sense? Good? Okay. All right. And how did I learn this? So I spent, in 2011, at SAP, we had a brand new CEO, and he asked me to put thought leadership content on our homepage. And it took me about 6 months to convince the rest of my peers in marketing, even despite the CEO asking me to do it, to put thought leadership content on the homepage. And I promised them that at the end of a year, we would have real revenue returned on the investment that we made. And this is sort of the math that I came up with and turned it into a book. We spent $100,000 US. We generated $1 million in valuable search traffic, but I didn't use, it's in gray because I never presented that number to the executives. We were able to generate $250,000 in real revenue from the email subscribers that subscribe to our content, and $540,000 in direct lead conversions from webinar registrations, event registrations, white paper downloads, all the different things that you saw on the left-hand side of that previous chart. When we connected the traffic that we were getting to the campaigns that we were running to our buyers, we started to see traffic we were getting for free converting to campaign landing pages. And you see there a 7x or $7 returned for every dollar invested. It was the most successful ROI generating program in SAP's marketing history. And so it was great. And again, I'm not promoting the book because I think the book that I wrote, The Content Formula, it's about the math. So if you're interested you don't need to go to Amazon or this landing page. Just send me an email and I'll send you a PDF of the book. But the problem was it didn't speak to the culture change that I had to go through and push inside the organization. So that's really what I want to talk about next. And so this is, I'm going to get into a couple of stories. So this is not a B2B example, but I think it's still relevant. It's actually my favorite example of successful content marketing. It's the most successful example that I know of. And so I want to share that with you just to give you a sense for what Amanda did. Amanda Todorovich was the director, now senior director of content at a hospital system called Cleveland Clinic. And I don't know how hospital healthcare works here in Finland, but we have basically private hospital systems generally set up by region or city. So in Cleveland, they have the Cleveland Clinic, and that's where she works. So it's a nonprofit, but it's private. It's not state-run. And when she joined, she's a resident of Cleveland. She has kids who had been through the hospital system. This is what she was asked to do, like most of us in marketing, create advertising campaigns about how we're the best hospital system and you should choose us over that other hospital system. And we've been #1 in heart care, and we've been #1 for 13, 14, 15 years. And as a patient and an employee of the hospital system, Amanda just didn't feel right promoting patients to come to their hospital system. She didn't feel like that's the way a healthcare system should be doing marketing. But she understood this need to sell the value of empathy. And so what she did was she actually created a video. It was originally developed internally only, but intended to change the minds of the CEO and his executive team about how they needed to change the way that they marketed. Not just doing advertising about how great they were, but that they actually cared for their patients. And so this is the video that she created. No sound. We forgot to connect sound. It's okay. There's no actual words in this video, but there are in the next one. So if you could connect the sound, that'd be great. But the point is, there's some background music, but they're just showing a series of vignettes or small little examples of what happens when people come into a hospital system. You saw that previous guy was dreading the appointment, fears he waited too long. This guy was coming to visit his wife. She's on day 29, waiting for a new heart. All of the kinds of things that happen, the dreadful things and sometimes happy things that happen inside a hospital. They're having coffee while they're waiting and holding vigil over their 19-year-old son who's on life support. If I continue to watch this movie, I'm going to start to cry. So I'm going to stop it here in a second. She doesn't completely understand. I think this next woman is too shocked to comprehend treatment options. I think the next one is, he's been waiting for 3 hours, so he's not happy. And I'll just show one more, I think. So this poor girl is petting a dog because her husband or her dad is terminally ill and she's coming to see him for the last time. So this is where I start to well up. But the point is, so she created, and it's 3 minutes long of just these little mini stories, internally only, presented it to the CEO and said, I think we need to change not just the way that we market, but our entire mission statement. And so that's what they did. They actually changed their mission statement from we provide the world's best care or something like that to improve people's lives, whether you could become a patient of ours or not. Very purpose-driven, empathy type of mission statement. And she was given permission to reflect that through all of the marketing that they do. And so she used this to kind of drive this point that she knew that frequency of delivering educational content to their audience. Have you ever seen this chart before? This is my third one. You can take this one. This is actually the one you should take. This is HubSpot, and they looked at thousands and thousands and thousands of companies on their platform. And I've seen similar data from WordPress, similar data from Drupal as well. So CMS systems that drive corporate websites that have blogs, and they looked at the frequency and the impact of frequency on traffic and leads for B2B companies. And what's really interesting is that when you go from a few times a year to a few times a month to a few times a week to the sweet spot, once a day, that's when you start to see, again, this accelerating rate of return from that investment. So it's not, people talk about quality versus quantity. It's really an irrelevant debate. Frequency is what drives results in content. Frequently caring and answering the questions that your audience has drives traffic and leads for your business. That's why content is the future of marketing. And that's what Amanda believed. So She created this site called Health Essentials. Healthcare is the number 2 most searched thing in the world on Google. Number 1 is travel. Healthcare is number 2. So she took advantage of that. She published an article every single day for 4.5 years. And you can see, this is the 4th chart that goes up and to the right, massive, massive increase in traffic. They're actually now, I think, the number 89th most visited website in the world. And it's just a small regional hospital system in the United States. One of the top 100 websites in the world, just because they publish one article a day and have done for 4 years or more, and have generated 5 million monthly visitors. 5 million monthly visitors to their website. Pretty amazing.
You know, it's 5 million people in Finland.
All just in Finland. So it's like all of you in Finland went to their website in just 1 month.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Do you know BuzzSumo? Do you know this tool? If you don't know it, this is my first gift to you after my chart that goes up and to the right. You can put any website and any keyword into BuzzSumo to see the most shared content on that keyword or on that website. I use this tool every single day. I use it to check myself. I use it to check my competitors. I use it for my clients. I use it for everything because it can tell you, and not that shares are necessarily a valuable metric in and of themselves, but shares are a proxy for engagement. And engagement is a proxy for quality because people don't opt to share. They don't voluntarily share crappy content. So Cleveland Clinic has an article about sugar addiction with 65,000 shares, one article. And I bet all of your websites, I bet all of the websites in Finland don't have 65,000 shares. And they have one article, maybe you do, but they have one article, one page on their website that has that many. And then they have 57 and 55 and 47, lots and lots and lots of shares. They're creating really powerful and impactful and engaging content. And they do that just by looking at the keywords that they know their audience is using and creating the content using a tool like BuzzSumo that tells them what kind of content is engaging. They created an article about what the color of your urine says about you. And what Amanda says when I talked to her for the first time, she said, it took us 5 doctors and 55 lawyers to review every piece of content that we used to create. And when I told them the power of content marketing and the impact that we could have by showing that we care for our patients, we can have really great results. And so they started to have fun with their content. They created an infographic about the color of urine. And she actually says that they market tested the word urine versus pee. I don't know if that. So anyway, so what they found was that urine works in the article headline, but pee worked better in the actual title of the infographic. Yes, if you're curious, if your urine looks like that, you need to go to the hospital right now. Yes, if it's purple, foaming, or fizzling, that's really, really bad. So you just need to go to the hospital. But all of this, it drove revenue. And it wasn't their intention to drive revenue. But what happened was they had some of the partners, some of the healthcare medical equipment manufacturers come to them and say, we'd like to market to the audience that you're building. Can we give you some money to advertise on the site? So they had to come up with a long list of procedures to make sure it wasn't inappropriate. But they're generating 7 figures or millions of dollars in revenue from this platform. Amanda's team does not cost even close to $1 million. And they're generating multi-million dollars in revenue every single year. So massive, massive ROI. So their CEO is pretty happy. And Amanda says that he's difficult to present to, which I think is code for being an asshole, basically. But she said that he was pretty much speechless and told her to just continue doing what she was doing. And as you can see, she has. So Amanda really pushed back against the kinds of marketing we all get asked to do. She put empathy or, wanted to show the organization that showing that they cared for their patients could really have an impact on their business, created content that reflected that, and that content then drove a really good business result. So again, not a B2B example, but one of the most successful examples that I know of. So hopefully you see something in there that can relate to you. The point is, I think Amanda started to redefine what marketing meant for their organization. Here's a B2B example. Just a quick story about Jill. So I met Jill a couple of years ago. She was with this company. It's a commercial real estate advisory firm. So they actually sell commercial real estate, but they also advise the owners of commercial real estate on how to maximize the properties that they own. So it's very much a B2B company. Jill worked there for 14 years, and then she was kind of surprisingly asked to lead the marketing organization. And we were talking about what is the future of marketing? How do we change and redefine what marketing really means? And this is what she found when she looked across their marketing organization. They were creating lots of ads that were ignored. They were creating content that wasn't being used. Their campaigns weren't generating leads. But she was actually in customer support and customer account management. She knew that their audience, their buyers, had lots of questions, lots of challenges that they could solve, but they weren't solving them in their marketing. They weren't solving them in their marketing. Is the sound working? Yes? Yeah.
When I was 5 years old, I wandered onto an empty train somewhere in India and fell asleep waiting for my brother.
Thank you.
When I woke up, I stepped off the train with no idea of how to get back. I described a map of my hometown to the Australian parents who eventually adopted me. But it wasn't until 25 years later that I heard about a tool that might help. I began the search for the family I'd lost, undeterred by the reality of what I was trying to do. Find a family of 4 in a country of more than 1 billion. Starting with the first thing I knew, I got off the train at Howrah Station in Calcutta. I thought about how long I was on board and worked out my search radius. I didn't speak Bengali, so Bangladesh was out. I remembered looking up at the stars, so I wasn't from a city. I remembered it being warm at night, which ruled out the colder regions. From there, my only option was to follow the tracks that still remained. Night after night, for 3 years. Until the night I came across a station symbol, and a water tower, and an overpass, and a ring road. It was the station where I fell asleep 25 years earlier. From 10,000 kilometres away, I began to follow the path I'd walked daily as a child, until I finally found what I'd been looking for.
Has anyone ever seen that before? Some of you have. So they made this into a movie. It's called The Lion. The guy's name is Sharu, which means the lion. If you do want to cry, watch that movie because it's a good movie or book. That's an ad for Google. They never once mentioned the product. It was Google Earth or Google Maps. But when I was talking to Jill about the power of storytelling, I sent her this example. And we were talking about what she could do in her organization to make marketing make an impact. And I sent her this because it's the only example I know of a brand that uses a storytelling formula that's pretty powerful. I think you could all see just the power of that brief video there, which really is an ad that you wouldn't know is an ad. But it follows a very common storytelling formula called the Pixar Formula. Has anybody ever seen the Pixar storytelling formula? I'm not teaching you anything new on that one. Has anyone not seen the Pixar storytelling formula? Okay, 2 people have not seen it. All right, if you haven't seen, for those 2 people, thank you for raising your hand. You probably just did that to make me feel better. Once upon a time, every day, one day, because of that, until finally. It sounds weird to say it like that quickly, but then you start to realize that almost every great story in the history of human civilization follows that exact formula. And that's what they did at Pixar, and it's why Pixar saw an amazing string of successes unlike any other Hollywood studio had ever seen, because they followed this simple formula. If you haven't seen this formula in action, here's Finding Nemo. Once upon a time, there was a widowed fish named Marlin. Every day he warned Nemo of the dangers of the open ocean. One day, Nemo swam out into the open water until he was captured by a diver. Because of that, he was captured by a diver. Because of that, Marlin traveled the open ocean. He met his friend Dory until finally Marlin and Nemo were reunited. What I think, if there's one thing I think is important about the Pixar storytelling formula for marketers, is that if you think of a movie, if it's an hour and 50 minutes long, an hour and 45 minutes of the movie is the problem. And only the last 5 minutes does it get resolved. And that's part of the nature, I think, of content that really engages us. We talk about, I like to say, we marinate in the problems. If we can sort of soak in the challenges that our buyers are facing every single day and write about those challenges, write about the problems, tell stories that ultimately get resolved. And sure, we're going to mention maybe the solution that we provide, but make your buyer the hero of the story and take them on the journey. And that's how we can really engage the audiences we're trying to reach. So back to Jill. So I was talking to Jill about this is where I really believe marketing is going, even for a boring B2B company like a commercial real estate firm. So how can we apply this? And so Jill basically decided that she was going to not just train their marketing team on the Pixar storytelling formula, but the entire organization. Because she's like, we have smart people, and some of the smarter people are actually not in marketing, right? We have experts that are all over the organization. Everywhere we go inside the organization, we have smart people. So she put together a storytelling training course for the entire company and asked for volunteers who wanted to tell some of their stories and share some of their expertise on their website. And that was the focus of her entire marketing effort. And because of that, she saw an increase of 12 times in the return on investment from the marketing programs and activities that they were generating. Not only that, but she engaged and activated the entire workforce. She turned the entire company into an army of storytellers. And they loved her for that because, how many of you have been excited to create a brochure? Like, I've never met anyone that was really excited to create a product brochure, but everybody wants to tell a story. Everybody wants to share what they know. And so that's what she did to the whole organization. And they got recognized for being a great place to work and a great place for working women and a great place for former military families and just a great place to work. That drove their marketing results. And Jill said the secret to her success is just thinking that everyone in the organization is in marketing because everyone has something to share. And they followed that Pixar storytelling formula. All right. So maybe you've gotten me so far, but you're thinking, there's somebody, and you probably have some person in your organization in mind that's constantly asking you to do stuff that doesn't work or constantly getting in the way of doing the stuff that you really want to do. I think what really gets in the way is the org chart. The org chart exists, it's boxes and lines, and it shows who's above us and who's below us and who tells us what to do, basically. And this has existed for, from the beginning of time. The problem is today's world doesn't really work in the way an org chart was set up. Because an org chart is really made up of real people. And so this is the real org chart. You've got the CEO at the top who's got a silent partner who really calls the shots. He or she may be sleeping with somebody who's 5 layers down. You've got somebody who supports the same football team, somebody who runs the office lottery. There's favors owed, jealousies, secret deals, threesomes, somebody who's admiring somebody else, religious connections. There's a drug dealer in the middle. There's somebody whose kids go to the same school. You've got old scores to settle, secret affairs, secret resentments, someone who knows about the corruption. And while we may laugh at this, the point is that the org chart doesn't work because it's real people. And this happens because we're all real people with real emotions and needs. And these are the kinds of things that happen inside our organization. So if we realize that the org chart really should reflect the fact that we're real people, then who's the most important person in your organization? Who's the most important person to all of our companies is our customer. But where's the customer reflected in any org chart? I've never seen one where the customer is reflected. So I've tried to come up with one. This is my model. It's crudely drawn, but I call it the bullseye. It's basically an organization that puts the customer right at the center. And the way that works is training, encouraging, and asking everyone in every department to ask for everything that they do, what's in it for the customer. If everyone inside the organization asked that question, you would only do things that add value to the customer. You would only do things that move them forward, that solve their problems, that drive the business forward, that drive your customers through some of the pains and challenges that they're facing. So that's what a bullseye organization or an organization focused on the customer would look like. So here's my brief story on somebody who's done that. This is Lily Lepine. I have 2 more stories left for you. Lily Lepine, she was the marketing manager at Capgemini based in Paris, France. She had a goal of increasing revenue and elevating, as a professional service company, their consultants, and elevating the expertise and the awareness of the expertise that their consultants had. But she was asked to do all the stuff that we all get asked to do: create ads and banners and podcasts and blog posts and lots of PR that talked about how great Capgemini was. And so she didn't feel like that was really the right thing to do. Capgemini competed with KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, companies I'm sure you've heard of. And when their CEO looked at KPMG, Deloitte, and Accenture, he saw this. They sponsored golfers, and they sponsored the LPGA, and they sponsored Tiger Woods, and they took out full-page ads in Golf Digest. So what do you think the CEO asked their marketing team to do? Sponsor a golfer. Take out a full-page ad in Golf Digest. Sponsor a golf tournament. That's what he asked the marketing team to do. And so the CEO asked the CMO to do that, and the CMO is a golfer. And she was really excited about the $20 million budget that she was going to get to sponsor a golfer. So she was pretty excited about sponsoring a golfer. And the decision came down to Lily to execute, go find the right golfer, either in the PGA or LPGA, or create the ads for Golf Digest. And she said no, because she asked, what's in it for the customer? She had done research that showed that only 15% of their buying audience cared about golf. And so she asked, hey, what's in it for the customers, the 85% that don't care about golf? They're not going to be influenced. They're not going to have greater awareness of our brand. We're not going to solve the problem you're trying to solve, and we're going to spend a lot of money doing it that you're then going to come back around and ask us what's the ROI for. So she pushed back by asking what's in it for the customer. So she's a living example of someone that did this. She used BuzzSumo to find out what content her audience was actually looking for. I used the keyword of content marketing. For her, it was big data and AI and cloud computing. But she looked at the kinds of content she knew her audience was interested in. Have you ever seen this tool, Answer the Public? Just a few of you. So here's my second gift, okay? I don't know what this guy is doing and why he's wearing that thick sweater, and he actually yells at you at some point. So just ignore him. But if you type in a keyword into Answer the Public, you get this cool mind map of all the who, what, when, where, why, and how questions that people ask when they go to Google. This is your editorial strategy in a graph. If you answer these questions that your audience is asking, you are now an important source of information. You're owning the conversation. You're sharing the expertise and solving your customers' problems based on the questions that you asked using one free tool that takes 2 minutes. So answerthepublic.com. This is SEMrush, which is another tool that I use just about every day. They also do a mind map based on keywords or topic search is what I think they call it, topic research. And so again, I used content marketing. It shows you all the most, based on search, all the most high traffic search terms. So again, 3 tools that show you slightly different perspectives of what questions you should answer in your content. So that's what Lily did. She said, hey, give me for 0.1% of the cost of a golf sponsorship, I think I can raise awareness and elevate our experts, raise brand awareness like you want, and you can hold me accountable by bringing 1 million new visitors to our website. We're going to reach people we never reached before because we're going to answer the questions. And she created this site called content-loop.com. You can check it out, still exists. Really successful example of content marketing. And after the first year, she achieved the goal of 1 million visitors, but they also stumbled upon kind of accidentally $1 million in sales. Wouldn't it be nice to stumble upon $1 million in sales? But she was pretty excited. She thought the CMO was going to be excited. She thought the CEO was going to be excited. But the CEO said, nope, I think I still would like to see us sponsor a golfer. And the CMO still really wanted to see that $20 million budget added to her budget line item. And Lily pushed back one more time because she said, listen, I looked at the $1 million, and what I found was that the authors of the content that we published were then followed on LinkedIn by some of the prospects that we were targeting, who then on LinkedIn directly asked for an RFP or a proposal from Capgemini. And that's how we closed the $1 million in business. So I think if we create a full loop, if we actually show how the readers of our content can connect directly with the consultants in our practice areas and actually sort of start to make that process a little more concrete, I think we can actually double the sales that we got from our program. And so that's what she said. opposite she did. She said, double the budget. We're going to put a connect to our experts on LinkedIn module on the right-hand page, and I think we can get $2 million in sales. And so do you think she got $2 million in sales? Do you think she did? What do you think? No? Yeah? More. $24 million in sales. Just by adding a module on the right-hand side of their content that said, hey, if you like this article from Remco on cloud computing or customer experience, connect with them on LinkedIn. And then Remco got a couple of RFPs, send out proposals, and closed contracts to the tune of $24 million, just by spending the time and the effort, a significantly lower time and effort than a golf sponsorship, to answer customer questions. So Lily really put the customer at the center of everything that they did. And she said focusing on the customer forced us to tap into our employees' expertise, and that's how we were able to show real marketing ROI. Good stuff? Okay. All right. I got one more quick example, and it's to answer this question, how do you get everyone that's not in marketing on board with, everyone thinks they're in marketing, everyone thinks marketing is propaganda and negative advertising. How do you get customer service and salespeople and HR and operations and finance and product people? Are there any lawyers in the room? I have legal upside down on purpose because lawyers don't care about customers. So just forget them. But everyone else in your organization, how do we get them on board? And so this is just a really, really quick example, and then we'll open it up for some questions, of somebody that used empathy to drive the customer experience by looking at what's in it for your employees, what's in it for our colleagues around the organization. By getting everyone on board, what's the value to them, not just to us and our organization, not just to our customers, but what's in it for them. And it starts with, this is Gallup research, and this is true, it may not be true here in Finland because you're all happy, but it's definitely true everywhere else in the world that people don't love their jobs. 32% of employees are engaged. More than half of employees are disengaged, and 17% of employees are actively disengaged. What does that mean? It means we're stealing pens and pencils, we're breaking our laptops, we're calling in sick when we're not really sick. Right? 70% of the worldwide population is actively disengaged from their companies. Maybe some of you are some of these 17%. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. The point is, some of us, and in some cases, a significant majority of us, don't love our jobs. And so this is a story of somebody who tried to solve that problem. This is Kristen. She's in the middle there. She dyed her hair since then, so you'll see her blonde in a few minutes. But that's her in the middle holding the onesie. And she was actually a healthcare marketing manager for Marketo. And what happened was, right after she joined, Marketo got a new CEO. It was a guy named Steve Lucas, who was a former colleague of mine at SAP. And Steve became the CEO of Marketo. And what he saw was a company that was kind of looking at, what do we want to achieve as a company? Marketo was really focused on achieving business goals. They knew they needed customers to give them money, so they focused a little bit on their customers. And this is about the percentage of time that they spent focused on their employees. When you joined Marketo, you would get a purple onesie or a purple, if you had a baby, you'd get a purple onesie. Is that onesie? Does that translate? Do you call them? It's a thing you give babies when you're, yeah. Or a purple hoodie if you don't have kids. That was the extent of their onboarding and recruitment process. And so Kristen was trying to solve that. She was trying to envision what it would look like working for a company that actually kind of equally balanced what we want as employees with what our customers want, and how does that drive results for the company? What does that balance, what does that sweet spot really look like? And so she asked, in order to drive growth for our company, in order to engage our customers, I think we need to get our employees to participate, kind of in the same way that Jill did at that commercial real estate company. So how do we get our employees to participate in a way that matters to them? And so she went around and she asked them, and what she found was that employees actually wanted to engage with the company, but they wanted to do it because it benefited them. And so this is what she started telling them. Hey, if you start to engage with us, engage with the communications that we're putting out, you can grow your own connections, build your personal brand, and propel your career wherever it may take you. And so they came up with programs like, do you want to become a blog contributor? Do you volunteer at a homeless shelter? Did you adopt a child or a puppy? Share that with the entire Marketo family, and we'll promote that content. We'll promote the expertise and the things that you do as both a professional and as a human being because it's good for you and it'll allow you to propel your career wherever it may go by building your personal brand. And so that's what they did. They came up with this mission statement to emotionally engage every single employee with something bigger than themselves, which sounds like a pretty high goal, I guess you could say. And they actually achieved 100% participation. So it's one of the most successful examples of employee activation, as I call it, that I've ever seen at a company. They've got a platform called Marketo Life that 100% of their employees log in at least once a week. And sometimes, like I said, they're logging in because they're sharing a piece of product content or a blog post. Sometimes they're logging in because they're sharing something that's happening in their personal lives with just their internal community. But 100% of them are engaged. They now have 65% employee engagement, which is double what they had when Steve Lucas started. If you don't know, Marketo just recently sold to Adobe for billions of dollars. Partly because of this. They're sourcing new hires 31% from employee referrals. So they're lowering their costs in HR, and they've got a 30% click-through rate. I don't know what click-through rates are like here, but in the States they're about 3% for an organic share on LinkedIn. For a paid share, it's something like 0.6% in the States. They're getting 30% click-through rates on employee shares of content on the platforms that they use. So dramatic increases in the kinds of engagement, participation, and then business results that they're getting. Not just good for marketing, but good for the whole company. Okay, so I think the last point I want to leave you with is just, what if we actually think, this thread ran through every one of the stories that I told you, but what if you think about your employees as the greatest asset that we have? And we've heard CEOs say that, oh, our employees are the greatest asset we have. But what if you actually thought of them as a marketing asset to share the expertise, to train them on storytelling, and to do it because it benefits them, and that when they feel good about that, when we feel good about the companies we work in, when we feel supported and encouraged, everybody wins. Our customers feel supported. Our company starts to grow. So our employees are the greatest asset. Our employees are really the future of marketing. So again, I've told you a bunch of stories, but the real hero of the story is you. So, maybe we're having drinks after this, yes? So maybe over some drinks, you'll tell me what you're going to do. Hopefully you'll do one thing differently when you get back to the office, but I really want you to think, just spend a moment thinking about the stories that I shared, the tools that I showed you, the tips and the tricks that I tried to infuse into each one of the stories that I told, and just one thing that you might do when you go back to the office. Just to quickly summarize, for Amanda, it was the power of empathy. Changing the entire culture, not just what they thought of marketing, but the entire corporate mission statement because of the empathy series. She ended up posting that video online. You can Google it. It's the Cleveland Clinic Empathy series. There were 3 videos they ended up creating. They have millions and millions of page views on YouTube. For Jill, it was the power of storytelling and activating storytellers across the entire organization. And that was her main mission as a new CMO. For Lily, it was what's in it for the customer. She really created a bullseye organization around Capgemini and resisted this $20 million waste that I think was going to happen for them sponsoring a golfer. And then finally, you can see Kristen with her blonde hair. The power of employee activation and activating employees across your organization. What's the ROI? Here's the simple model that I use in my book. Like I said, you don't need to buy it. If you want a copy, I'll send you the PDF. But this is the model. For whatever marketing objective you have, whether it's awareness or engagement or conversion or retention, there is a measure of success that you can use to show actual business value. What's the cost of organic search if you had to pay for it? Subscriptions can convert to leads and sales. Conversions happen at the conversion level when it comes to leads, but also when we tie content marketing with event marketing, we can start to see lots of massive improvements in return there as well. I have a few clients whose sole business objective is to increase retention, and the one client I have saw a 4 times improvement in retention rate with their customers that engaged with their content. So when they looked at customers versus that engaged with content versus customers that didn't, 4 times higher retention rate and lifetime value for those that do. Creating content helps drive customer satisfaction and customer experience. So that's just the simple model that you can get out of the book. And I think with that, we'll have some questions and then we'll have some drinks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.